Welcome to the Emblazers show, where B2B leaders are igniting revenue. I'm your host, Abby Kerr, and our guest today, talking to my colleague Tim Riesterer, is Dr. Bryan Hochstein, one of the leading academic voices in B2B sales and customer success. Bryan runs the Masters in Sales Leadership program at the University of Alabama and has published research in places like Harvard Business Review, Journal of Marketing, and the Journal of the Academy of Marketing Science. Before academia, Bryan was a sales executive at Time Warner Media, which gives him a rare blend of frontline experience and research depth. Most recently, he's been exploring how companies like BigCommerce, Siemens, and Axon are using customer health scoring, not just to prevent churn, but to unlock growth. Bryan is also a co-author of two widely used textbooks, Marketing Strategy and Sales Management, and is known for bridging the gap between academic theory and real-world sales leadership. Let's go to the show right now.
Hey, Dr. Bryan Hochstein. It is good to see you again. It's been many years. Before coming on, we were just joking about our Wisconsin heritage that we share, but you're clearly rolling tide right now as I see your backdrop there. So thanks for being here. And you are known in our circles as the Doctor of Customer Success Management. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Our regular viewers tend to have sales in their title, but we recognize that revenue is really the title, and the outcome we're all after, and how you keep and grow customers is a huge part of that. And so congratulations on your recent publishing in HBR, the article toward healthier B2B relationships, basically how to reduce churn and how to increase expansion. HBR, that's always awesome. I know you're well published in peer-reviewed journals, but now you're at least in one that people read. So congratulations. Good to have you here. So I would love to start out because the sort of the theme of the article is customer health scores. And in the article, you quote some stats that say only about 35% of companies have advanced customer health scores. And so I would love to do just a little context setting for the other 65%. Talk to us about what a customer health score really is, how it fits into the dynamic of customer success, and why it's so important to companies overall.
Totally happy to talk about that, and thank you for having me. And I will just quickly say, I do have sales blood running through me too. I was a salesperson sold for 20 years before doing this job. So customer success to me is an extension of sales. It is something that fits well with sales. So we'll get into that as we go. But getting specifically to the customer health scoring thing that we talk about in the Harvard Business Review article, I found this to be a really interesting part of customer success, and it's what Harvard HBR was most interested in too. It's a metric that is a predictive metric. Ideally, depends on your cycle of your customers, but it should be about a 9-month predictive metric of will a customer renew 9 months from now, 6 months from now, depends on what you're selling. And it's made up, it's like a dashboard metric. It's made up of many metrics. And it's designed to get a better picture than, say, an NPS score or a customer satisfaction score or something like that, or just a gut feeling of how are we doing with our customers today. It's a much more objective way of looking at how are we doing with our customers right now, and it should be predictive of will they renew their contract when that time comes around. Looking the difference of sales versus CS is in sales, if you're short on your revenue number at the end of a quarter, you can meet a few weeks before the end of the quarter and try and move the needle on that. If you're short of your retaining a customer a few weeks before the end of that contract, it's very hard to rebuild the relationship in a week or two, right? And by making some phone calls and selling things at a discount or something. So they need to know further out if there's problems or if things are going well. And the customer health score brings that together in one single metric, bringing together a lot of different factors we can get into.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying, but I'm still going to say it, that recognizing the value of existing customers and keeping and growing them, it was born kind of in the SaaS environment. But I don't know a company today that isn't looking at their existing customer base as the predominant revenue driver every year, year in and year out. And what a great statement to recognize you can push and pull some levers at the end of a quarter and make something move in your pipeline, but it's way too late with customers and retention and renewal. And so let's get into it. Let's talk about what this customer health score is. Every company right now should be like, oh man, I need a 9-month window here. What am I looking at? What am I looking
totally.
for?
And the article, we break it down, and this article came from other research we've done as well. So there's well over 200 executive interviews, probably more than that if you add it all up. But what we were trying to do is come up with like what is in the customer health score. We've heard about it. Some people have heard about it. The companies do it differently depending on what they sell. But we came up with, over a broad set of industries and products and companies, 3 main elements of the customer health score. And this is, again, trying to do more than just give us like an NPS score and fix some of the problems with like single measurement items, like maybe poor response, or are you talking to the right person? When we start talking about these things, the 3 areas are customer relationship quality. Nothing super new there. You'd want to assess that. Product usage, not really new because we'd always think about it, but knew how we get the data and measure it. And then value realization. Is the customer getting value regularly from using our product? I think all of these would be things salespeople would think about, but the customer health score starts to look at them more through a data way that is updating itself in real time in many cases, sometimes subjective things, but often very objective measures that are being compiled behind the scenes to keep a relatively accurate score that's moving around as things go on throughout the day, the week, the year. So that's kind of the 3 main, or that is the 3 main dimensions of it. And I want to point out about the first one. We can kind of start there. This customer relationship quality. What I see as really new there, of course, we always wanted to have quality relationships with our customers. That's not new. The term isn't new. But when you start thinking about these SaaS products or lots of products today that involve SaaS or just about anything today, the customer isn't this monolithic, Tim, you're my customer and you're the only person I care about at your company anymore. You may have 1,500 people that are using my product as end users. You may be the executive, or you may have an executive team above you that needs to be a part of the decision making in 9 months or 6 months from now when the renewal comes up. You may have a team of people that work on the IT or the operations part of this. There's a whole bunch of people. And even that's not a new thought, but trying to get inputs from multiple levels of that to assess relationship quality is what customer health attempts to do. So it's not just about what you think. That's important. It's not just about what your executives think. That's also important. And it's not just about what your end users think, which is the third thing that's very important. It's trying to measure how all of you think at different points through different types of data.
They're all touching your solution from different angles for different reasons, yet all of them have a voice in whether or not they will renew and do more with you. What's the secret to getting those inputs? I mean, are you running assessments against those different constituencies? Do they let you do that for each of those constituencies?
Yeah, so like
how does
for
that happen?
relationship quality, the whole goal is to make it as objective and automated as possible. So using data that exists somewhere, this is often the biggest challenge of it, is bringing together data. Even in our today's world of AI and huge amounts of data, I still talk to companies every single week that are like, well, that data system doesn't talk with this data system. And they're still having problems with this even right now. So that's probably the biggest challenge of it. But there's lots of ways we can get at this. I think traditionally the way would have been some sort of, we ask you, either I ask you as a salesperson or we send you a survey or an NPS survey or something. That can still be incorporated. If your company likes using that stuff, that can still be incorporated in the measurement. But those things don't happen daily. They have some flaws in them. So you try and find other things. You can do, like with end users, some kind of maybe more frequent push type little prompts to them to get that kind of stuff through the actual system. But the secret of it is that in almost all cases, not true for every last product, but there is some form of tech. So if you can get at ways that you can measure relationship quality through the actual products, not just the use, we'll talk about product use, but through the product somehow, you kind of get a picture of what's happening with your product inside the customer's sphere. That's probably more vivid than what they'd even know if you ask them about the product, right? So you can see if people are adopting it, if they're doing the training, if they're doing things that would indicate that it's going well. You can also include in relationship quality some more traditional things, like, are they paying their bills? Are they responding to emails? Are they engaging with us when needed? And we ask them to do something or change something, are they following through on it? So you can try and measure it. I mean, this is the stickiest part about the customer health score. There is no, here's the recipe for customer health. We came up with 3 main dimensions for every customer, that every company I work with. It's usually a matter of sitting down, talking about what data do you have? What can you access? What are we trying to achieve? What would measure this kind of piece of information at different levels? And then can we somehow pipe that into a common dashboard?
All right. So customer engagement quality, you give that about a weighting. You gave everything a weighting, and you gave that a 25% weighting in terms of its impact on the overall customer health score. I get it, many variables, but identifying which ones you think are relevant, and then identifying your ability to source that data, whether it's just inline or a push. Got it. Now, that leaves 75% of the weighting and 2 more buckets to go. Let's talk about the second one you mentioned, which was product usage. Makes a lot of sense intuitively. Let's talk about how you define that and how you measure it.
Yeah, product usage, I think, is the most interesting part almost of customer success. It's one of the main pillars of why this is something new and different that I've discovered as I've looked into this over many years. Because we can actually see how a customer is using our products. If we have some sort of sensors, digital, some sort of SaaS product, doesn't have to be just a software product, but many ways we can get this information now that we couldn't in the past. So product usage would be things like how many of the end users are using a particular aspect of our product, a module or something. How many are using a feature? Is this company using all the features it could be, or are just some of the people? We're not looking at the data that's being input by the customers. We're just looking at their usage patterns of our product, right? So we're not looking at anything proprietary for them, but we can get a really good view of how their people are using it, how their other higher level executives maybe are looking at reports and things like that. Is it bringing, ultimately we get the value, but are they using it in all the ways they could? Or are they missing things that other companies are getting a lot of value from ultimately? And can we help them to find that part, to improve their business, to get more value from our product? So product usage, I think, is really important to customer success. And for the health score, it's one of the easier things to actually calibrate, to quantify, right? And to put into a score, pipe it right into a score. Usually the problem is there's too many inputs here. So which are the most important? So it takes a little bit of thought work to get to that.
Yeah, and determine where there's some correlation between retention or not, or even some, as close as you can get to some cause and effect, I would assume. So is that a process of working with enough companies to understand generally what usage activities correlate with retention, or is that kind of a product by product or category by category sort of thing? How, as a listener, would I?
Yeah. So it typically would be specific to your company. So with the HBR, we work with the company Big Commerce. We worked with them on lots of projects to this day. But that's how we started working with them. Is they were creating a health score, they were weighting it, they were including different elements, but they had lots of data. And we helped them to, it's one of our learning lessons, is to calibrate and check what they were doing with that data, right? Just because they think this was right, did it actually, did that become real? Was that real in their data, right? So they came up with what they thought should be included. We looked at their data, including those variables and many others that they had, and then identified, were these the most important factors? So it's a little bit of data analytics to figure out which are the most important correlated factors to ultimately churn or retention, depending on how you're looking at it. But you can narrow that list down by looking at your data, probably is the first guide. And then you want to kind of do a gut check or whatever of, does this make sense? Like maybe something's highly correlated, but it doesn't really make sense to what we can do or anything like that. So maybe that's not a good measure. So it takes a little bit of upfront learning from your data and from probably your salespeople that have a good handle on some of these things that should be working well. But bringing those two together, you should be able to come up with a small set of kind of key indicators.
Makes a ton of sense. And it really already, I start to think just how small, forgive me for this, for those who care, and potentially how insignificant or spurious an NPS score can be. It is so singular in these two large scoring VATs that you gave us, the idea of engagement of the customer and relationship of the customer, and now all the product usage data points that you might get to. Customers, the companies, they can't just rely on NPS or CSAT anymore. I can't imagine it.
I think it's malpractice. I mean, in Harvard Business Review, they do a lot of research with NPS scores, so we try not to overplay it there. But if you think about an NPS score, it's conducted differently, but at best, it could be maybe quarterly. In most companies, some may do it more often than that, but probably at most, that's about it. And then when we look at different companies' NPS, they often only get 20 or 30% response rate from their customers. The responses typically come from just one person in a customer company. That could be different in other companies. I'm not sure I know everything, but in most cases we look at, it's like one person answering some of them from some customers and not that often. And companies are making very large decisions on that. It's not very precise. It's missing a lot of data. So from a data scientist kind of perspective, having a lot more inputs that are a lot more regular, like everyday product usage trends, it seems to give you at least a little better assurance, and you can get a much more calibrated and accurate predictor of what you should be doing in business strategies to go forward.
What if your next big revenue move didn't come from a blog post or a cold LinkedIn scroll, but from a real conversation with leaders who've been there?
As the world of sales is constantly evolving and constantly changing, I think it's even more critical to get together with people to understand how are they helping to solve some of the problems that our buyers have today.
Meet Emblaze, a community of sharp B2B minds, CROs, CSOs, rising stars, sharing what's actually working in sales, enablement, and customer growth.
We always find a lot of value in the partnerships that we're able to form with some of the other great organizations that are part of the team here. And personally, I love the opportunity to connect with my peer group outside of other organizations and learn from them and try to figure out if there's things that they're doing that we can pull into our organization and benefit from.
Join a monthly forum, dig into science-backed strategy, and get insight you won't find in your feed. Start your Emblaze journey today at emblazegrowth.com.
Well, we're going to move to the third bucket on value, but I just, these two buckets are interesting to me because one feels like it's the product usage, and some of that's related to the performance of the product and just its general acceptance and applicability. But customer engagement and a lot of adoption and usage, I think, is also based in the experience that your customer is having with your teams, helping them implement, helping them change manage, helping drive adoption and usage. Is there a way of determining in your mind, like how much product performance matters to renewals and expansion versus how much of the experience with your commercial teams is driving that? How do you think about those two levers? And then we'll talk about obvious things like value next. But I just want you to give me a comparison.
Talk about value to get there too, because ultimately in B2B anyways, value from a product is going to be it's just accepted that should be, that's why it's weighted at 50% in this model. That number may differ by industries, but the B2B buyers shouldn't be buying just on experience, or if they have a good experience that enhances things. If they have a poor experience, but it brings them lots of value, that maybe is okay. There's a whole 2x2 we could talk about. That's a different topic, but the experience is important in B2B, definitely, especially when you have more competitors and other products. The less you have, the less it's important. But value is ultimately what B2B buyers are buying. Does this bring something to us? So we almost have to get to that conversation to get
Let's
there.
Go to bucket number 3.
All right.
So you weighted product usage as another 25%. So we've got the 50 between relationship engagement and product usage and adoption, and now the value bucket, value realization, business impact, I'm assuming, and you weight that 50%. Everybody's going to nod their head. Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think this gets done nearly enough. Talk to me what it looks like when it's done right.
And I have another new paper coming out, and we actually get into this whole idea of how customer success and ultimately health scoring is really about goal achievement. And then there's 3 dimensions of that. That's a whole nother podcast we can talk about. But the point is, the customer success manager, in one area where it goes a little beyond sales, perhaps, their goals really become the customer's goals. I mean, I'm working for the selling company. I'm a customer success manager, but I'm thinking about your goals from using my product. Like, will your company actually downstream make more money because you're using my product? Will you actually do things more quickly? Will you, I mean, sellers tend to, deliver the product, get it onboarded, and, and of course support it, but they're not spending their whole day thinking about, is my customer getting more value from this product that's contributing to their ultimate downstream financial performance? We talk about that being, the customer success manager works in the customer sphere. There's lots of things like that. But the point is, it's very important, and it's so important that you can't just hope it happens, right? Or hope that it works out. So you need to be measuring it and finding ways that you can measure how your product is impacting things. One example would be looking at like efficiencies. Like, you can see how the customer was doing processes last month versus this month using your product. And are they doing more of them now? Are they speeding it up? Is the average time being reduced that their people are working on this? Is some AI enhancement actually getting them more, right? Or whatever it would be, right? Can you quantify that into some kind of, now you're working with less people, or you're expanding and growing more and able to do more business with the same people? That's like real value that's quantifiable to a customer. If you can identify that, that's not only a great selling point, it also helps you to know that they're going to stay with your product, because the more you're bringing them value, they know about it. You're setting some goals with them and achieving them, the more they're going to be interested to continue buying your product and buy more of it.
One of the things that I heard in what you were saying there, Bryan, is that it's incumbent on us, as let's now take the side of, we're the vendor, we're the partner bringing the solution. It's incumbent on us to document these results and derive and demonstrate and communicate the value realization and impact. We can't wait for the client to do it, can't expect them to do it, because everything that we're in business for rides on that. So that's our job, to proactively do that. But sometimes the data, the unlock is on the client side. Like, we need input, we need information from them. We can't just derive it all from our solution. Talk to me a little bit about that role of a CS or account management. We'll get into that a little bit later. But how does that work?
Very interesting question. I'll give you kind of the short answer. Ideally, if you're doing customer success, or you can use these same things in sales, account management in some ways, but you'll be setting some goals with your clients on a regular basis, and you'll be working towards those goals over a defined period of time. And then you'll be reporting back at a certain time to see how you did with those goals, and then set new goals, right? Called success planning. And if you're doing that, there's going to be some client buy-in where they're willing to give you some more access to their data, some more access to ways that you could help them quantify that. Because ultimately, if you're my decision maker, but you're representing a company of 1,500 end users plus executives and other people, I mean, you would like to know also. You have to know that, but others need to know it and be communicated, and helps you look better in your job. So it's a process. Some of it can be determined through looking at the data that is produced by the client, but others might come from that goal setting process where you're agreeing to certain things that you'll get some information on. It's different every product company depending on how you can do it. Efficiency tends to be one that you can capture without too much input from the client, but it really does keep you ahead of your competitors, right? If you're in any kind of competitive space, which is most of them, I wouldn't want to just be hoping that they found value in my client today, because there's too many other people have too many new things that are changing too fast. So we need to keep on a real good cadence that we're setting goals, we're delivering, you're seeing value, it's the stuff you need, and it's making your business move forward. I wouldn't just delegate that.
Yeah. I mean, we have the research that says that reinforcing their status quo bias to you, because you are their current incumbent, is almost entirely reliant on you documenting those results, anchoring them in positive results, because a new vendor coming in doesn't have that. They now look riskier because folks know that they've sunk cost with you and they've gotten results with you. It makes it really hard to infiltrate that as an outside competitor. To protect that, to give you that firewall, you need this kind of data. You also have mentioned something about the kinds of results. Like, sometimes we put a project plan together, and there's some milestones that matter to the project team, but being able to ladder that up to things that the departments and the executives care about and can count on for higher order metrics that matter seems to be really important. That seems to be part of this. Is you got to think about the metrics that you're actually calculating and that they have meaningful impact on the business.
Definitely. And all of these things, in almost everything, customer success is a good idea taken from somewhere else that we already know, but then doing it consistently and regularly and at a smaller level, right? You might implement a large solution as a salesperson, with a client, and you may do that over a 6 or 9 month period or something, but this keeps that kind of same process going, but at smaller levels that just keep repeating over and over again. So you don't stop implementing ever. You just keep growing and hopefully growing business along with that and retaining customers. So it's really, it's an interesting space because it's hard to get an exact handle on it. You can ask me about sales and CSM, but maybe a quick take on it that, salespeople should be doing all this stuff. I worked in sales. I did a lot of this kind of stuff, but my job really was to reach a quota to sell a certain amount of dollars of revenue for a product that I needed to do every month and quarter and year. Along the way, I had to be a good salesperson and good to my clients. Obviously, I didn't want to just sell. I was selling them things and I was supporting it. But the more I couldn't get in this far into the weeds, right? That what customer success managers can do, looking at very, very important, but kind of not overly large product use things and how to get this team over here using the product a little more like that one over there that's doing well. That would take me a lot away from my selling goals. So that's really where they kind of diverge. And I think you need both. And some of these things can be done by account managers. But if you really want to get deep into the customer health and you have a product where it lends itself to a lot of continued growth of the value the client can get from the product, it's worthwhile to have somebody specifically in charge of that doesn't have the same sales goals. Their goals are helping the customer to achieve more value consistently. Different goals. It's very different goals.
With the ultimate goal, but assuming that a great customer health score is predictive of renewal and expansion, which is the ultimate goal here. If somebody's first defining it and then in charge of delivering that customer health result and tracking that and continuing to show progress, that should make the rest of the selling part easier, is the assumption. So talk to me about calibrating this now. So 50% is value realization, documenting results, business impact, tracking that to seeing, project to department to corporate levels. Cool. Product usage, making sure it's just bleeding into the DNA of the organization, and customer relationship and the kind of, let's just say, advocacy that matters at the end of the day. So talk to me about now calibrating that and knowing you've got the right mix, right? I'm just picturing somebody turning different dials.
Ultimately, a customer health score is going to come up with, we'll just say a number between 0 and 100, right? So that's the easiest way to say it. And the company we worked with had, they did 70 was great health, 51 to 70 was good health, and anything below 50 was at risk. They checked that and calibrated. They came up with what their recipe was for this metric, this one score, and then they checked to see do those things seem to be lining up with what we're actually seeing in our data? Is this we did a lot of behind the scenes calibration. I'm willing to work offline with people if they want to talk about that to make sure their score was right. But if it was calibrated right, then they also tested, okay, do these scores mean anything versus our churn? And we found that yes, I mean, the at-risk ones were the ones, it seems obvious if you have a good score, but they were finding less than 1% of the ones that were in the good or the great health would churn. There was really no risk of that. And even the ones that were in the good, there was almost zero risk that they're going to churn. It was very low risk. And then they saw most of their churn in the at risk, which allows them to be proactively working with those clients in the upper echelon there, the good and excellent health, and then kind of more reactively trying to figure out what do we do with these ones that are at risk today, as opposed to proactively keeping them in a good spot, right? So I mean, the calibration is that they also find that, I want to get one point before we run out of time. We also find very interesting to sales that this health scoring, once you get it up and running and have some history with it, you start to be able to segment or figure out what are some common elements of clients you have that consistently get better health than those that have poorer health, right? So you can start to come up with different segments based on the health score. So you're producing kind of a new data based on the data you have, but a new way of looking at it. You can use that data. It's like It's almost like exhaust coming out of a car. Some cars put that back in to, like, get a turbo or whatever, boost performance, right? So we're using this outcome of a process. The company we work with, Big Commerce, is using that to identify, well, we have these 5 segments of kind of similar type customers that are regularly very healthy with us without a lot of intervention. So they use those to then identify new leads, prospects of companies that they don't work with that have similar characteristics. So now they're going out and instructing their sales team to try and find clients, not just based on the general market or other older segments, but about let's try and find new logos that should be healthy with our product. They have the factors that would make them work well with us. So we're not bringing on as many ones that we're going to have to deal with later as ones that are poor health, right? So it's kind of a neat thing. They call this the flywheel. There's other things that come out of it too, but they find a lot of this kind of secondary benefit that comes out of this customer health scoring. It's great. Yes, you're right. If you are doing a health score, doing it well, you're being proactive with the good clients, you're being reactive and addressing problems with the ones that are at risk, you will have better retention and you will ultimately grow the business, right? I mean, we've seen that over and over again, empirically and just anecdotally. Then if you can use the health score to drive other things in your company to bring on more successful clients that'll be healthier with you with less effort, it just kind of, they call it a flywheel, right? That's kind of like what it'll do. It'll get going more easily as time goes on. It's a little bit of a lift to get the initial health score in place. It takes a little time to get it calibrated properly. But once it's going, it provides a lot of benefit that I mean, it's 35% was at the time of publication in 2024 when the HBR came out. I don't know the exact number right now. I believe there's some more adoption from what I'm hearing in the marketplace of customer health scoring. But to me, it's a no-brainer if you have the bandwidth to develop this thing, because as a former salesperson, if I could look at a dashboard, even, my customer health people could use it, but I'm also the salesperson involved. If I could look at a dashboard and kind of know which clients need attention today and which ones just need some maintenance as opposed to like some intervention, that would be like gold to me, right? So I think it helps everybody. I know it helps everybody throughout the organization, from the CEO down to the salespeople to the CSMs, to have a good and relatively accurate health score. It just helps you keep on a good path that should be successful, barring some weird market change or something like that.
Well, I love the idea of seeing this as just a holistic revenue engine sort of metric, not just the retention and the expansion opportunities and helping you get there, but the fact that you can pull that back into the acquisition side and add it to the what we call the ICP, right? Is like, not lots of times the ICP has a lot of variables that are interesting in it, but high-performing customers who generate great health scores, maybe with minimal intervention, would be another great add to the ICP and your targeting efforts. So I love it because CS, I think, emerged, and then there was some question about like the value it brings to the organization. But if it is the keeper of the customer health score, you see all the goodness that can bring. And it seems like a lot of companies out there could benefit from it, given that current adoption is maybe still under 50%. So hopefully those of you listening today to Dr. Hochstein and his expertise, we'll put in the show notes how to get a hold of you, if that's okay, Bryan.
Please do.
Happy to have you back again some other time, because you can only scratch the surface of these things. But this has been a wonderful, not only reminder, but I think next level recognition of how to approach this. Sorry to all the NPSers out there. I'm just going to have to
It's a part of customer health. You don't have to drop it. You can keep
You don't
using
have
it.
to
It just
drop it,
makes
right?
it a little bit more effective.
I
or a
just
lot
wouldn't
more
bet my
effective, I should
career
say.
on one number. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, Bryan, thanks so much for what you're doing to continue to drive this part of the revenue engine. He brought up exhaust, so I'm just kind of going to keep that theme going. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And we'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
Another amazing episode. Thank you so much, Dr. Bryan Hochstein. Thank you, Tim. And thank you for watching and supporting the show. Find us on your favorite podcast app. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.